Welcome back, Tiger Nation. This is Kenny Stubblefield with our guy, with your guy, everyone's favorite, Roman Cleary. What's up, Roman?
Man, everyone's favorite guy. That's quite the compliment. But
It's the
no,
truth.
I'm doing well today. How about you?
I did a poll on Twitter, and you were overwhelmingly
You did a
everybody's
poll?
favorite guy. Yeah, I did a poll. Yeah,
I didn't see this poll.
it's a secret poll. It
Was
was a
I
pri
blocked from this poll?
You were like, I couldn't let you
So
swing
I
the votes. Yeah, you were gonna put your thumb on the scales of the
man
voting. Yeah.
oh man. Well, uh, thank you all for voting for me. If this poll is even real, I greatly appreciate it.
All right, I have an announcement. It's not real. The poll was not real. I'm just assuming that you're everybody's favorite guy because we
Oh
got
man,
big stuff to
I knew
talk
it
about.
wasn't real. Knew it wasn't,
Oh,
but
come
I
on.
was still trying to play along with it.
Okay. Well, we got some fun stuff to talk about, man. Obviously the season has been over. Penny is full on in the off season at this moment. And I'm telling you what, man, as much frustration as Tiger fans have throughout the actual season, the regular season, with some of the things that happen with the Tiger team, there is one thing that is perfectly clear about Penny Hardaway is that he very rarely loses in the offseason. And today is a great example of that, right?
Yeah, definitely here. I mean, if we're talking about PJ Haggerty, just a tremendous pickup that Memphis, has gotten here. And you got to feel real good if you're Memphis that it got done early. Just kind of establishing the line of defense here. Hey, this is kind of your guy moving forward, you know, and with all the questions surrounding the status of whether or not David Jones is going to return to this team, you can at least have that sense of comfort, that sense of feeling now that regardless of what happens with David Jones, you have a guy on the roster who can hypothetically lead you back to the NCAA tournament. So that is the most significant thing for me when you're talking about PJ Haggerty coming to Memphis.
I mean, you're a college basketball fanatic. You watch a lot of it. You've probably seen a lot of PJ Haggerty this year. Obviously, he's an intra conference transfer from the University of Tulsa. He played his freshman year. He's a freshman. Was he a redshirt freshman at Tulsa this year?
He was a redshirt freshman. He started his career at TCU.
Right.
Played only 6 games, so he redshirted that season and then transferred over to Tulsa for, I guess, what you call his like real freshman season,
So we
even though
saw
he's a
him
redshirt freshman.
so we've seen him. We've seen a lot of him. We've seen a lot of the stuff. We even saw him live and in person in Fort Worth at the AAC tournament. What are some of your uh,
Yes.
your thoughts on PJ's game? What he offers, and does this kind of indicate to you a little bit about where Penny Hardaway is, where his mind's at in terms of how he's trying to rebuild his roster?
Well, he offers a lot more size at the point guard position than Kendrick Davis or Javon Quinterly does. And, Penny really tried to fit more of that big guard mold earlier in his, tenure here at Memphis. And he kind of went away from that for the past 2 seasons with KD and JQ. But he seems to be trying to, go back to, hey, let's get some more, bigger guys on the perimeter to, try to rectify some of the defensive issues that we've had there the past 2 seasons, especially last year. So that's the number one thing that stands out for me when you're talking about PJ Haggerty in Memphis. Uh, it's difficult to try and, you know, break him down in the sense because you're looking for things that he can't do first off
Right.
with him. Then you're looking for things that he can do. He's a tremendous scorer. He's a great facilitator. He can rebound the ball. Solid defender. Averaged 2 steals a game this past year. The one thing for me that is a bit concerning is that his shooting can be improved. He's a 50% from the floor guy. He's fantastic, guy who can score in the paint. He can drive. He can score inside. He can win at the rim and all that. But when you get him out on the perimeter a little bit and force him to shoot deep, that's when you get a little bit of weakness there. But he can still make 3-pointers when he's left open. And honestly, if this roster is built the right way, you won't need him to, be the number one 3-point shooter on the team. Look, here's just how it is, for me anyway. In terms of guys from the transfer portal, ideally, this is the best that it gets in
Mm,
terms of the star power that Memphis
yeah.
has. I mean, PJ Haggerty is a 21 point per game guy. I, from this point on, unless David Jones comes back, this should be the number one guy on the team. Should be the guy that you're ideally building your roster around, catering to, because this is your number one guy. And again, I think PJ Haggerty is good enough to lead a team to the NCAA tournament. So get talented players that fit his needs. Get talented players that play well with him, especially considering that this isn't going to be a 1 year rental, you know? Or at least hypothetically it won't. We're talking about program pillars. We're talking about guys that you can build a team around. PJ Haggerty seems to fit that description. He's going to have 3 years of eligibility remaining heading
Right.
into this season. So to have that kind of, tread left on as high a player as this, he's a guy that I think you should put a lot of investment in moving forward.
So let me, thoughts about, kind of, you said we kind of see some things that he doesn't do well. A lot of it is shooting. If you've, watched any of his games, he played on a not a very good Tulsa team, right? The team was not great. It was kind of quite literally the PJ Haggerty show
No, was not.
um, over there. And what I noticed a lot in a lot of his games is that his shots, um, he trying to get into the flow of the offense, trying to get something in a set play, run a set, run something, run some kind of action, and get open. And a lot of times his deep shots came at the end or kind of end of shot clock type of situations where he was having to just bail out, the relatively bad players on his team, right? Like they ended at the end of the year 16 and 15, and I think he's responsible for quite a few of those wins. I think you could honestly say he was the guy that was the reason they even had a winning record in the first place. And so I wonder, and this kind of leads me to my next question to you. I wonder if him playing on a team with a marketably better roster, Lord willing, as Penny's in the portal, um, a better roster than what Tulsa had last year, if we'll see some of those shooting numbers increase, kind of like we did with David Jones this year. And so I guess so my next question to you about PJ is, and about Penny and kind of the next steps moving forward is, how would you build out this roster if PJ Haggerty is your number one guy? Then how would you build out a roster to not only amplify PJ Haggerty, but also, be a better team, be a team that's cohesive, and be a team that can actually make a run in tournament play?
Okay, so the approach for me isn't too different from the one that I kind of laid out on the Anthony Sane show during my appearance there. Uh, you'd like a big that can run the floor, that can score efficiently, can rebound the ball, and basically the opposite of Jordan Brown, right? And we're going to talk about Dain Dainja here in just a few minutes, getting to that point. But I think a big's important there. But honestly, since PJ Haggerty is so versatile, if you just get talented 3 and D guys around him, I think you can do relatively solid there. Honestly,
So how do you see? Obviously, Penny is very clearly not waiting to find out if David is coming back to start filling out his roster. He is bringing, but potentially the opportunity is still out there for David Jones to be back. How do you see a guy like PJ Haggerty and David Jones potentially playing together?
for me, I mean, if David Jones comes back, then that's great. You have 2 high-level scorers on the team as opposed to one, and you need another bucket getter regardless of what happens with David Jones. But it is going to be important if David Jones decides to come back that you have to establish the hierarchy there. Now, obviously, things change a little bit in terms of like PJ Haggerty's placement on the team with Jones coming back because Jones has to at least be that number one scorer in a sense. But I still think even at that point, the offense should be running through Haggerty. After all, he is the point guard and a high level one at that. So if Jones comes back, maybe he is more of your number one scorer in that case, but you still want Haggerty handling the ball most of the time and still, being the number one, I guess, focal point of the team, even if he's not averaging the most points or something like that. Because
Yeah.
David Jones is a bucket getter. He's a dude that just needs to rack up stats and rack up the points. That's what he's there for, and that's what he's really good at. PJ
Yeah.
Haggerty can do a little bit more than that.
Yep.
So he can
So I
still
mean,
be the number one focal point of this team in other areas, even if Jones is back.
so if we were to compare apples to apples in terms of last year's roster, this year's roster, if you have your starting point guard last year was Javon Quinterly, and your starting point guard this year would be PJ Haggerty. Um, Tiger fans were left slightly disappointed and aggravated with the way that Javon Quinterly played at the end of the year, kind of throughout his time with Memphis. Um, do you see this as an upgrade for the Tiger team as with their guard play?
Honestly, I feel much better already about what PJ Haggerty could potentially bring to the team than a guy like JQ hypothetically did. Even just coming off of the instant reaction to that commitment. You're talking about a guy who has a motor all the time. Really, you're not going to see him check out on certain possessions like you did with JQ at certain points. You're not going to see him just like have a super terrible, scoring output. He only got under double-digit points one time for the entire season this year, and that was an 8-point outing against Little Rock. But other than that, he scored at least 12 points in every single game. Well, scored at least 11 points in every single game. So you're gonna at least get a decent amount of scoring from him every single night.
Right.
So just automatically there. And
So we discussed it
he
a few
spent this
minutes.
entire season losing to all these teams.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. I was about to say he spent this entire season, with all due respect, losing to all these teams in the AAC. He knows what it's like to be at the bottom of this conference. So I don't really imagine him being a guy that's gonna like check out a ton and not really care during conference play, since he's been in this league already.
I agree. Obviously, so we discussed a little bit. PJ Haggerty's kind of your centerpiece. Your first guy to commit. He's your centerpiece for this transfer portal class. At this point, at least, he's the centerpiece. But Penny isn't done, right? Like Penny's going to have to continue to bring in guys, and the Tigers also got another. He also got another commitment today from Illinois, big man transfer, Dane, and we don't know how you say his last name, but we're gonna say it. Me and you have decided we're gonna call him Dain Dainja, and so it could be
Dain
Dainja.
Dainja.
It could be Dainja.
Welcome to the danger zone, Kenny.
Exactly, we're in the danger zone. Dain Dainja also announced after PJ Haggerty that he was coming to Memphis out of the transfer portal. I'll be frank with you, man. I didn't watch a whole lot of Illinois this year, so I don't know a lot about Dain Dainja. But what are your thoughts? What have you seen? I have done a little bit of research on him since his reports of him being on campus were put out there by our friend Hitman Hoops. But what do you know about his game, and is he what kind of a replacement is he in the middle in the big man position?
Well, I think the number one thing to talk about when you're discussing Dain Dainja is, the relative lack of production that he had at Illinois, because that's what a lot of the fans are going to be looking at. But if you look at how many minutes he was actually playing per game, he only played 10 minutes a game this past season, and yet he still ended up averaging 6 points and 3.6 boards a game. Those are incredible efficiency numbers. In the year before that, he averaged 9 points and 5 boards a game while averaging, 20 minutes a game, while playing 20 minutes a game. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential there. I've heard a lot of people say that. He's a relatively talented guy, 6'9", 270 pounds. You'd think he's a guy that is capable of nothing more than simply, standing in the paint and, doing post moves and things like that, kind of the Jordan Brown mold. But that's actually quite the opposite. He's a guy who can, run the floor. He's a guy who can get up there and make these athletic plays. He can't exactly, I guess, like face guard perimeter players or hedge ball screens the same way that someone like Malcolm Dandridge could, but he's still a relatively athletic guy who I think can be a good fit in Penny's system. And if you're bringing him down to the AAC level of competition, he's probably going to translate to more of a 12.8 board a game guy. So if he goes in the next season as your starting big, I definitely am not going to hate it. Now, I think you'd like to get another big at some point before this portal season is over, but Dain Dainja is certainly a solid start to building his front court for 2024-25.
You mentioned that he might not be able to blitz a pick and roll the way that Malcolm Dandridge, or hedge out and blitz a pick and roll, a ball handler in that regard. But honestly, in a lot of ways, I don't think you want that. You don't want that to be a common part of how you guard
No,
extended
no,
pick
you
and
don't.
roll.
I'm just saying that's what Penny has asked his perimeter his big guys to do before. So I just thought
He
it was
has.
important to mention.
Well, no, it is important because Malcolm did that a lot last year, but he did it honestly because there were two guards on the team that had no interest in fighting over picks and re-engaging in that action. And so with that, like, he almost had to, it was going to be an open lane to the basket. But the problem is, when Malcolm did that, it just left everything else exposed, right? Like, you saw a lot of, you know, like passes out to the wings and wide open 3-pointers. Um, with a guy like PJ Haggerty on board, you're not going to have that problem. I don't think you're going to have a guy who is willing to. You've seen it in his numbers, you've seen it in his highlights, you've seen it in the way, just in games that you've seen him play. He is a very
Yes.
active defender, active hands, big time motor, and doesn't
Yes.
doesn't take defensive plays off.
No, absolutely not. PJ Haggerty is a really do it all player. I'm not going to call him, the next Lester Quinones or anything
No,
like that,
no.
but he's a real solid perimeter defender who's going to give much more effort on that end than a guy like, say, Javon Quinterly. So
Yeah, no,
that's already
absolutely.
a big boost in of itself.
So obviously the portal season just got started. It is not, the tournament's not even over yet at the time of this recording. But Penny has already made two splash commitments with the transfer portal. PJ Haggerty from Tulsa transferred to Memphis, and now Dain Dainja from Illinois is now a Memphian. 6'8", 200, or 6'9", 270. PJ Haggerty 6'3", 205, 210, something like that. Big time guard. I think I've seen places he's ranked number 2 in the transfer portal at this point, which is huge for the Tigers.
Number one
So,
portal player in the country, according to On3. He's number one
oh,
according to On3.
okay, cool. Well, I trust On 3 when it comes to the transfer portal. So, anyway, big time stuff for Penny, man.
Yeah.
Things are looking good. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, he does not miss in the offseason. This is what he does. He gets players. So,
No, definitely not.
just another example of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I think the players that he's getting at this point seem to be a much better fit for what a Penny Hardaway team should be. I mean, last year he was just going out and getting talent. Now, we were all kind of fooled and miraged by it, but let's just call it how it is. He just went out and got talent last year in the middle of the summer when there weren't many options left. You're getting this done now at the beginning of April when there are seemingly all the options available and more options probably to come. But I think it's really good that Penny got the point guard spot locked down as early as he did, because there were going to be a ton of options out there. Yeah, for sure. But I don't think there was going to be a better option, at least for Memphis' purposes, than PJ Haggerty. So if you let him get away, that definitely would have hurt. So luckily for Penny, that did not happen.
Hey, listen, it's shaping up to be a pretty crazy summer. Tiger basketball. One thing we know, Roman, is that basketball never sleeps, man. It is a year-round thing. Obviously, if you are listening to this,
Yes.
Bluff City Media is going to be on the front lines of all of it in terms of coverage, in terms of breaking down commitments, and Roman is right there. He is the lieutenant of this thing. So, Roman, I appreciate you. Y'all check out Roman hit them with your social medias and all that kind of stuff, where they can follow you at if they've seen that, if they're seeing this.
Yep. Follow on X at Row Clear if you want to.
Yeah, follow at X. You can go to bluffcitymedia.co.
Should if you want the latest coverage, but
that's right. bluffcitymedia.co for all of Roman's articles. He'll be on all the podcasts, everything. So you'll see a lot of Roman over these next few months. But a good day for Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers, landing PJ Haggery and Dain Dainja to the 2024-25 team out of the transfer portal. So Roman, you got anything else you wanna hit before we get out of here?
No, I think we're good. Just again, a really, really good start to this portal season for Memphis. I think these are two guys that fit extremely well with what Memphis wants to do this upcoming season. And PJ Haggerty is a guy who I think can be that program pillar, that guy you can build around moving forward, assuming he's not a one and done type player. So yeah, it's a really important day for the Memphis basketball program for sure.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Anytime there's breaking news, you'll see me and Roman. So we will see you back here next time.